It's the 4th of July weekend in 2020, and I wanted to do a short piece here on the aftermath of all the George Floyd rioting and looting and burning in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is a story by Matt Vespa of townhall.com, and a reporter goes into the aftermath of the riots and burning and looting of Minneapolis. This doesn't get hardly any news coverage by the national news media for obvious reasons, that being Minneapolis is run by Democrats and Minnesota is run by Democrats, so it doesn't benefit any narrative on the news media to highlight the failures of the Democratic Party. And you can see here just absolute devastation. It looks like a war zone. And this reporter, Michael Tracy, went through the town. Here he says, "I'm in Minneapolis. Stops at this corner store owned by an Iranian, a minority-owned business. He said they, quote, took everything." So this is how minority-owned businesses were treated in Minneapolis in the peaceful protests. Here's a bridal center smashed and looted, record store, Nicolette Fashion, child care center. Looks like something horrible happened there. It looks like it was burned out on the inside. Now, this was the focus of my piece. Target seems to have forgiven the rioters. If you remember the earliest footage from the riots in Minneapolis, reporters were standing in front of the Target store, and the reporters were following a template and a narrative stating this was white on black, black on white, blacks protesting whites, black protesting white police departments, and so on. But as you watch the looting going on behind the reporters at the Target store in Minneapolis, in that neighborhood, most of the looters were white, or at least most of the looters were not African American, to be precise. So the reporter was saying one thing about African American outrage. Meanwhile, all the people looting and burning in Minneapolis were of completely different ethnicities. So Target here had their stores completely looted and gutted. And I wanted to look at this article here. This is Minnesota Governor Walz, who's a Democrat, asked President Trump for disaster declaration. He wants federal funds to rebuild Minneapolis and Minnesota. Now, there's a slight problem with this. While this was going on, Democrat officials in Minneapolis and Minnesota got together, and I'm sure the topic came up: what should we do to stop all of the burning, looting, and destruction in Minneapolis and Minnesota? Here's a Target store. And the consensus of the Democrat politicians when they met in secret was, don't stop anything. Don't send in the police. Don't send in the firefighters. We will just bill the rest of the country for all of the damages, and we'll blame President Trump. So you can see here the attitude of Democrat politicians. Don't stop the rioting. Don't stop the looting. Don't stop the burning. Let it all take place, and then they come to the other 49 states in the United States of America and demand that the rest of us pay to fix all of this. Which brings me to this story here. Target has announced that they're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, my post here is not really on Democrats or the aftermath of the George Floyd looting in Minneapolis and Minnesota. If you look here at Target's corporate policy, let's just focus on that one Target store in Minneapolis that we saw being looted by protesters, peaceful protesters, as they stole everything that wasn't nailed down and then smashed and burned everything else. Target's reaction here is to reward the looters, to reward those who looted and burned out their store. Their reaction is offer a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, this has several consequences for Target. For one, that $15 an hour minimum wage gets tacked on to every bit of merchandise that you purchase as a shopper at your Target store, wherever it is located. It also means that at those particular stores where they are getting this $15 an hour minimum wage, of course that sounds wonderful until you remember that this simply means Target will have less staff and less people to help you. It means longer lines at the checkout lines. It means no one available to ask questions about or to find merchandise for you. When you increase the minimum wage like this, you prevent high school students and college students from getting an entry point into the marketplace. And this also affects inflation. If everyone has a $15 an hour minimum wage, suddenly you can no longer buy a pizza for $10. And if you want to get a Big Mac or a quarter pounder with cheese, those sandwiches are going to be above $10, maybe $12 to get a sandwich. Now, I'm not talking out of just guesswork here. I spent 10 months in Australia as a student. Australia has a $21 an hour minimum wage. And for example, if you go to the McDonald's in Australia, they have 2 employees at the McDonald's at any given time. They have the cook and they have the manager who acts as the cashier. And the line is several dozen people no matter what time you go to McDonald's in Australia. And this is how Australia has accommodated a $21 minimum wage. It also means, since there's no tipping at restaurants, that the waiters were uniformly rude because they weren't depending on you for tips. And of course, any store that had employees got to be very choosy of who they hired. So you didn't have the regular amount of staff at any of these places in Australia. They had the absolute minimum staff. They also had a policy of paying double pay in Australia on Australian national holidays. So you know what this resulted in? Nobody was open on Australian national holidays because they weren't willing to pay the double pay salaries. So you had the entire country shut down on the holidays, whereas in America we would have President Day sales and 4th of July Day sales, Memorial Day sales. So that's just an aside on Target announcing this. But let's go back and look at this particular store in Minneapolis. Now, the taxpayers are being asked to pay for all these damages. Essentially, none of the looters are being required to pay for the stuff they damaged. None of the looters are being held accountable for the things they stole. They pay no penalty. They have no consequences for looting, rioting, and burning. In fact, they are rewarded for this behavior by the Democratic Party and by corporations like Target. Target is taking all the costs of this destroyed store and passing them on to everyone who shops at every other Target store around the country. So if you shop at Target from 2020 onward, you are paying for every cent of damage that you're looking at in these photos. You pay for this. The people responsible aren't paying for it. They want to be rewarded for this behavior. And this is absolutely disgusting. This is not America. So, no to the governor of Minnesota. The rest of the country should not pay for one penny of the damage that you encouraged, that you supported for political reasons. Democrats thought they could politically benefit from burning down their cities and their own towns. Well, let these Democrat politicians pay for every cent of it. I would think, at minimum, someone like this Minnesota governor should receive 1 year in prison for every dollar of damage that he allowed his state to undergo. And the same for all these other Democrat officials that encourage looting, burning, and autonomous zones. And we also have the corporate responsibility here. Target doesn't want to be anybody's enemy, but look at what they did. If they had just had a few managers with shotguns at the entrance to their store, this looting wouldn't have happened, and they wouldn't be asking me and you to pay for the damages. Why is it that the people doing this looting get rewarded with a minimum wage increase by Target? Why do they get rewarded by having no penalties for doing this? And liberal politicians come to the rest of America demanding that we pay the bill. No, we should not pay for one penny of this damage. The people responsible should have to work it off the rest of their lives on public works programs, put them all in a chain gang, and have them work this off for the rest of their worthless lives. Why do they get to benefit exclusively from this temper tantrum, and the rest of America, the taxpayers, the people who earn a living, Why is it that we are required to pay to fix all of this? That's not the America that we signed up for, where you can destroy everything, have no penalties, and then come to the rest of us to foot the bill to fix it. No, no, no. This is evil on display, and evil is being rewarded. Evil is being told they can continue doing this the next time they want free stuff. This is disgusting. Look at this. This was an African hair salon and an Ecuadorian restaurant. All gone. You're going to tell us this was benefiting minorities? Here's another Muslim-owned business. Halal meat market. Not anymore. Look at this. Here's a dentist office. Provided care to underprivileged children and the uninsured. No, Democrats, your politicians should not be rewarded for encouraging and instigating the rioting, burning, and looting. You shouldn't be allowed to blame President Trump for your own criminal policies. Every Democrat politician who allowed this to happen should go to prison, and they shouldn't be coming to the rest of us to pay the bill. Absolutely ridiculous. And corporations like Target should know better, because I will never shop at a Target again for the rest of my life, because I know I will be asked to pay for this ridiculousness. I am not going to pay for this by going to Target and buying anything. Target, you are crazy if you think I am going to foot the bill for this crap. You should have sent the manager there with a shotgun in the doorway and blown the head off the first looter that came to break into your store. Shoot the first 3 looters, and you don't have to deal with this. Thank you.